What's up, guys? Another Down the Middle podcast. My name is Nomal.
Ryan.
And today we will be talking about not in depth, but the Miami incident that's recently happened about the building collapse.
Yeah.
But more specifically, about Biden and his response to a reporter that's asking the question. So we have a clip. It's about 2 minutes, so we'll run that through. And do you want to maybe interject, or do you want to finish the video and then we'll comment on about it?
Well, just to say, I was happy he went down to Florida to see the collapse. He was with Governor Ron DeSantis. They seem to have been working together to try to figure something out. National Guard, FEMA troops were provided. The Florida National Guard is there. But then we have Joe Biden talking about why it is he thinks the building collapsed.
Yeah.
So let's get to the clip.
Do you want to run through the whole clip? Or just stop from
No,
time?
we'll
run through.
Let's stop.
Stop. Okay.
Yeah.
So like Ryan just said, it's about the reason why this video is even coming to fruition right now is we were not happy with his response.
Yeah.
So we'll get into it and explain why. But first, we'll just go to the clip.
I figure we'll stop time to time, make it quick for you guys, right?
Yeah.
Because I know you guys see our 50-minute videos and you turn away.
You have a question?
Oh, hold up. Let me increase the volume.
First of all, he asked the press conference person if they have a question.
Right. Which is kind of weird because that's what it's for.
Yeah, that's why they're there.
To ask questions.
But that's not why we're here. That's not why we're here.
Yeah.
Okay.
That wasn't the part.
Oh, thank you. What did you learn, if anything, about the collapse of the building? Is there anything more you learned from investigators or the FEMA administrator?
No, it's underway. I don't, and the director of FEMA is with me here. We don't have any firm proof of what's happened. There's all kinds of rational speculation about whether or not the rebars were rusted, whether or not the cement, whether it's limestone.
So first, just rational speculation about rebars being rusted. We have pictures of rebars being rusted that were released a couple days ago, and there are multiple forms of proof on what actually happened here. We know the building was old, that maintenance was turned down, and that the rebar was rusted. There was water in the basement. There is plenty of actual proof about what actually.
And just to comment on that, there's proof of there weren't optimal resources used in the production of this building as well, and on top of that, many. It's not investigators, but building investigators is the wrong word, but it's more like they survey the building. And after the collapse, they did like a mini survey, and they realized there were a lot of structural problems.
Yeah,
which is obviously proof of one of the reasons why it collapsed in the first place.
Sounds like our government.
Yep.
Yeah, but it's all rational speculation. So as long as you say rational speculation, anything is on the board.
Anything can run. Yeah.
I don't know. This button's so small.
Whether or not. But a lot of the families who survived talked about how upset they were that in the last years that they've been here, how there was one condominium complex built across the street and a road was purchased, and while they were living there, they would hear the drilling and they'd feel their building moving and shaking. There are all kinds of discussions about whether or not they thought that water level rising, what impact it had. And interesting to me, I didn't raise it, but how many of the survivors and how many of the families talked about the impact of global warming, how much it, and they didn't know exactly, but they talked about sea levels rising and about how there were, and the combination of that and the concern about incoming tropical storms. And so, but I don't think there is at this point any definitive judgment as to why it collapsed and what can be done to prevent it from happening and what other buildings may have to be inspected to determine if they have the same problems. Nancy?
Well, that was the whole video, but it looks like you have some comments.
That's so sad. It's just the families who survived, and they're just so worried about the incoming storms. Oh, I feel so bad for them. And the way that the sea rose and the building just couldn't take it. And it's horrible. And the climate. It got so hot, the building was just like, and just fell. It's just horrible. It was just such a hard scene. No, I was like that because it was tough to listen to that.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Do you want to...
No, go ahead, please.
Okay. So that was our main problem. I don't know, the way Biden just approached that problem, or the question was, in my opinion, insensitive. Because we all know, like, for some reason, we talk about the checklist agenda and all that stuff. So just for, just to source it out, apparently climate change is a left-wing issue.
Yes.
And not like a, right wing, whatever. So it's a left wing. So obviously Biden's on the left side, and it almost looks as if he took that opportunity to take such a tragic event and to push an agenda.
Yeah.
Right? So he could have just stopped with, we don't have any concrete details about what happened. And then it's kind of weird to me to hear that the first response, not he didn't say the first response, but a response that first came up from the victims and the families, they talked about global warming and sea levels rising, as if everybody in the building was a climate change scientist.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird that each one of them would bring that up as if it was the main problem. And we'll get into like why we think it broke down in the first place. But to say a thing like that, I think is insensitive. And in my personal opinion, I think it's more of just to push the idea of climate change. And we're also not here saying that climate change doesn't exist, and it exists. I think it does exist personally, but it's just insensitive.
And you know what's funny? What's so funny? Like, climate change is on the left wing. It's like the threat. Yeah. It's like there are like 5 of the biggest threats that will ever face us. But climate change is constantly one of them.
Yeah.
This is a fault in infrastructure. That's why this building fell. He's trying to pass a huge infrastructure bill right now. Yeah. And he's trying to convince the Republicans to jump on board. They're on board. He wants to convince them to do the other one too. Don't you think that would have been a great time to push the infrastructure bill? Like, hey, the infrastructure of this building caused this building to fall. We should pass infrastructure. No, the infrastructure of this building caused it to fall. Let's talk about climate. And the survivors are the ones, the people who they fought for their lives and get out of here. Oh, I can't believe the seas are rising so much and it's getting so hot all the time. No, the survivors are not talking about that. That spider was the building once it got warm out. And it obviously just pushing an agenda forward. It clearly, I don't have facts on the survivors who he spoke to, which I'm sure were not a lot. I mean, if you're gonna say that he interviewed, I think you'd have to interview thousands of survivors from this building to get 5 people to mention the climate.
Yeah,
and I don't think that Joe Biden talked to that many people. No,
and there are still there's 20 currently right now as it sits. There's 20 confirmed that are passed, and then around 128 still missing.
Yeah,
and to think that the victims and survivors and the families of those survivors, that the first thing, they're not thinking about their neighbors that are still missing. They're not thinking about the people that have passed away, but they're thinking about the climate change and the sea levels rising, and they have a comment to make about that, and it doesn't sound human.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't sound human at all. Because obviously we'd worry about what's happening in front of us, and then we get to the root problem, right?
Yeah.
Just how Kamal said, you can't fix a problem without the problem. No, you got to find those people first, and then sift out the situation, and then we talk about what could be actually the cause. That's usually how it goes.
That would be scary if they actually believe that you have to get to the root before you can fix the problem. Yeah. And you have a lot of evidence that this building was being ignored. It wasn't being maintained. It was sinking. People are on the record saying that they were just being ignorant to the maintenance of this building, and that there is a very, very high probability that it was an infrastructure fault, which is why it collapsed. But that's what you get, right? He's trying to push for that agenda that maybe it was the climate, maybe it was the sea levels, and this is what everyone's talking about.
Yeah, and we're also not sitting here and saying that it's most definitely not, sea levels rising, because also the building was built on marshland, and then obviously, it doesn't take rocket science to know that there's more water levels during marshland, in marshland areas. So I'm sure, especially being so close to the water as well, on top of that, being on top of marshland, it's just the whole foundation of the building was just crap.
Yeah, and my argument against that is that there are definitely older buildings in the area. There are definitely buildings that would be theoretically more susceptible to falling, since when the water wasn't rising just under this building, it's rising everywhere. Yeah. So these other buildings are aware of that, and they're taking care of their infrastructure. This building fell because the people in charge weren't doing that. Maybe that's why they were building another condo across the street, which Joe Biden says all the survivors who just lost their family members and the people who were next to them were complaining about in this moment.
That's the first thing it's so weird.
He did not talk to these people. It's as simple as it gets. They just lost their neighbors. But do you remember when they were drilling and the building was shaking and I couldn't sleep, and then I went to the ocean and I realized it was a millimeter higher? No, it didn't freaking happen like that. So, I mean, crazy stuff. Just crazy stuff. Bad press conference, but that's the first time that's happened.
Right. And like I said, like it's 99% sure it's infrastructure, and we're not here to tell you that it's confirmed what the actual reason was. Our whole point of this video is the response to the reporter's question and his response of using the tragic event as a tool to promote more of a climate change perspective on why that building, collapsed. And I think that's unfortunate and very insensitive to the survivors and their families.
Yeah, so, I mean, basically, just make sure you keep your fans on. Your house could collapse if you don't. But make sure they're solar powered and electric powered too, because if you use gas, then you're racist. So, yeah.
And prayers out to the families that have been affected.
Should have said that first.
Yeah, honestly. But it doesn't matter. We were still saying it, but it's definitely a hard time. I mean, especially to know that there are 128 more people that are missing.
Most likely they're deceased.
Most likely, but there's still hope, I'd say. But as long as they're still missing, I think there's still hope. So I mean, prayers out to them, and hopefully something comes out of it, right?
Because it's crazy. Like I looked at the pictures of it, and I'm thinking that they can speed this up, but you actually have to lift up like every single piece of fallen debris, and just to make sure, you can't just use machines. It's hand.
I was literally just thinking about that, like, why aren't they using like more like bigger like equipment, like would you just say the
like machinery,
like
a crane or something?
But you guys know
there are people underneath.
There are people, and they have to go by hand, and that takes a while, and it's just not a good situation at all.
And it's not just like you pick it up and then that's it. You have to pick it up. You have to physically transport it. It's just it's a scary situation, and this is why we pay these people to make sure the infrastructure of these buildings is good, because these buildings have been standing for years and years and years, and
no one should go through that. Yeah,
this is the stuff that's a real possibility. So, of course, prayers out to Florida. Yeah. Prayers out to Southside. Or was it Southside? Is that what it's called?
I'm not exactly sure the name of the. Maybe it's on here.
I think that's what.
Just in Miami, it's a condo in Miami, but I'm not sure the exact name of it.
Yeah, I forgot. It's something with the 2 S's, but prayers out. Biden, come on, man. Come on.
Yeah, that's all I gotta say.
Yeah, that's it. All right.